Hey everyone, I'm back. No demo this time. All right, so as Trevor alluded to, today I'm going to be giving an update about some features that we have rolled out in the last 9 months since our last Qubits in both the Ocean open source tools as well as our hybrid solvers. So I think it's important to introduce the way that D-Wave tries to think about our product stack. Like, what are the things that we are trying to solve, and what sorts of, and for the things that we release, they each fit into one of these categories. So the first focus area for our product releases recently has been quantum optimization. This is obviously D-Wave's bread and butter, has been for a long time. We've been very successful at it. We've heard from a lot of great customers over the last little while talking about their successes in the quantum optimization space. And Emil alluded to why the quantum annealing is especially well suited for quantum optimization. But two other focus areas that have really especially gotten some focus in the last year have been quantum machine learning. And this has been largely driven by a couple very successful customer engagements, and I'll talk a little bit more about those, as well as quantum research. Alan, in his keynote, mentioned the importance of doing fundamental research to support our products, to support the sciences, to move forward quantum computing as a whole, and our products need to support that kind of work. Okay, so running through each then of those areas separately, I'm going to start with quantum optimization. And when you want to talk about quantum optimization with D-Wave, these days what you want to be talking about is our non-linear solver. This is our flagship hybrid solver that we launched last year at Qubits. And when we launched it, we showed you an example, we talked a little bit about it, but one of the things that's emerged over the last 9 months from talking to various customers is that because the nonlinear solver is a little bit unusual in the space, in fact, it's unique, folks have found it hard to sort of understand how it fits. And so one of the things I really wanted to do with this presentation is present this slide. This is the slide I am most excited about, because what it's doing is, what I'm going to try to explain is, what is the philosophy that underpins this solver? Why did we build it? What concepts are we bringing together into this solver so that it can do what it does? So the way to think about our nonlinear solver is that it is the child descendant of 4 different streams of optimization. And as far as I know, this is the only solver that combines all 4. The first one, and in some sense the most obvious, is quantum optimization. This is D-Wave's special sauce. This is the thing that we have access to that nobody else has. It includes both the quantum computer as well as the algorithms that make use of the quantum computer, and even some algorithms that are designed from a physics-based approach. We have a lot of extremely smart physicists and smart algorithmists that make those things happen, and this is something that we can bring that's extremely unique to the overall market space. The second big stream of optimization that we're incorporating is mixed integer linear programming. For those of you who are operations research folks who have done optimization problems in general, most often when you think of optimization or commercial optimization, you're thinking about this stream. This is a stream of optimization that's derived from a particular type of algorithm called a linear program. These are problems of the form like 3x plus 2y equals 5, 4x minus 2y equals 6. We all solved those sorts of problems in grade school. That is a set of linear equations. And it turns out that for continuous variables, for that type of problem, if everything is linear, you can actually solve this in polynomial time. This was an insight that was made quite a long time ago, and an entire field of optimization was born from this, adding features to it, binary variables, integer variables. Now you have MIQP for quadratic interactions, MINLP, other sorts of things. But it's still, in many ways, derived from that linear program. So, just to give you a sense, like Highs and Coinor are some of these open source solvers, as well as some of our competitors in the space are coming from this place. The third main stream of optimization that we're incorporating are these list sets and other combinatorial variables, these sort of set theoretical variables. And if you're coming from a sort of typical operations research background or optimization background, this I think will be the thing that's most unusual. The basic insight of this space, which is derived from a lot of folks doing sort of constrained solvers, is that it's not always the best to think about variables as single numeric objects. In mixed integer linear programming, you tend to talk about variables as either being like a continuous value or a binary value or an integer value. In this sort of combinatorial structures, we talk about sets and we talk about lists. A variable can be all permutations of a list. So if you say want to do a traveling salesperson problem, all possible orderings of cities, you can just represent that using one variable. You don't have to use n-squared binary variables or anything like that. Or if you want to solve a knapsack problem, you simply have the set of objects in your knapsack. You don't have a binary variable for each possible object. This has been an incredibly important insight to a lot of our success over the last little while with customers. Finally, the last stream that we're drawing from is this tensor programming stream. So this one, as far as I know, D-Wave is the only folks doing this in the optimization space. If anybody knows otherwise, I would love to hear about it in the Q&A or otherwise, because I'm genuinely curious. But the basic insight here is the insight that is much more common in machine learning. This is the insight that TensorFlow had, which is, what if rather than working on individual scalar values, we instead thought of everything as matrix operations? You're not adding two numbers, you're adding two matrices. You're not multiplying two numbers, you're multiplying two matrices. You're permuting them or rotating them or taking the inverse, those sorts of things. And it turns out that because most of your data, most of the problems you all want to solve are given to us as like a CSV or an Excel sheet that has all of the data in it, that thinking about things in terms of matrix operations is actually not only more performant, but actually often a much easier way to think about problems. And I'll be talking about that more in a couple slides. Okay, so our nonlinear solver then is combining all of these four streams. So it's not only a hybrid solver in the sense of being a quantum classical hybrid solver, it's also a hybrid in that we are bringing the best of many, many different expert areas of optimization into one platform. And that's really how we get the benefits and the performance that we get. Okay, so that's very high-minded and philosophical. So I think it actually makes sense to spend a little while of talking about like how we approach this, or giving a few simple examples to kind of walk you through some of the basic data structures, the basic approach that we use in NL Solver. Ignore the fact I said data structures. That's a scary word for, some people really like that, but not everyone in the audience loves that word. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the world's simplest constraint. X plus Y is less than or equal to 2. You don't want to spend, X is the number of apples to buy, Y is the number of oranges to buy. You don't want to buy more than 2 of them. So first off, when you're working with our nonlinear solver, expressing this constraint is very easy. In the bottom left here, I have an example. This is the actual API. You can do this symbolically in Python. Very easy, very straightforward to work through. But I also have on the right-hand side this sort of tree structure that encodes this problem. So if you go back to your grade school order of operations, you will remember that you can take an expression like this and sort of evaluate it one by one. And you can see how we can turn this x plus y less than or equal to 2 into this tree structure. We have x and y, which are our variables. They're at the bottom. They have a plus between them, so they both point up at this plus. The output of that is then passed to the less than or equal to at the top, along with the 2. So we call these different circles, these different nodes in the tree, symbols. This is an important word, symbols. And so we can represent this problem symbolically by using this sort of structure. So why do we want to do this? Well, let's take this problem from a linear constraint to a nonlinear constraint. So the max of x and y is actually a non-linear constraint because it's not linear, it's not just an x plus y. So number one, taking this constraint and encoding it in our solver looks exactly the same, except instead of using a plus, we're using a maximum. But you can see that using this exact same structure and simply replacing the plus symbol with a max symbol allows us to represent this problem. No extra work was done. We simply had to change the flavor of symbol that we're using to represent the problem. Yeah? We can take this even further. This is where that tensor programming thing starts to come in. Now I have a large number of equations. I have 9 variables, and I have different weights associated with them. So I could make a fairly complicated I could make a fairly complicated tree on the right that uses all 9 of those, and it would get very complicated. Or I can have the insight that this can be represented using 2 different matrices. So I have an A matrix, which has the weights associated with each of the variables. I have my B matrix, which gives the right-hand side. And I can reuse this exact same structure that I used before, except instead of operating on individual scalar values, I operate on those arrays. So this is where that tensor approach comes. And this is a very nice way to deal with large-scale problems. This has been an absolute game changer in terms of our ability to express customer problems. I cannot tell you how nice this has been. We're very excited about it. All right. So as I alluded to then, the set of things, the types of problems that you can express in the solver is then, using that sort of structure, is exactly the set of symbols that you have available. So if you want to do x plus y, you need a plus. If you want to do x times y, you need a times, or a multiplies. If you want to do max, you need a max. we have a lot of symbols in the solver. This is actually the set of symbols here. I think I've counted them correctly, and we have 49 different symbols that we support in the solver. This is an enormous amount of flexibility in terms of the types of problems that you can express. Far more abstract than any other solver that I know of in the space. Very, very, very abstract. And so not only do we have quite a few different symbols that can express many, many, many different customer problems, we're also adding them very quickly. So I've gone ahead and highlighted in blue the set of symbols that we had available at launch 9 months ago, last Qubits at June. This is slightly more than half of them, which means then the inverse set, these teal ones, have all been added in the last 9 months. That's about slightly more than one symbol every 2 weeks. That is the pace in which we're adding new features to this solver. And actually, as on a note of gratitude, many of these symbols come directly from feature requests from you all. All of these symbols that I've highlighted here in orange are ones that were directly requested from a customer as part of a professional services engagement. So for those of you who are in our launch program working with our professional services team, you are helping drive our solver and make it better. It has been truly a pleasure adding all of these features to support your customer problems. So this has been really great. Thank you, thank you. All right, so I only got a 20-minute talk, and I've gotten really excited, so I'm going to move along. And I'm going to highlight one symbol in particular, which is our linear program symbol. So keen listeners will remember that I already used the phrase linear program earlier. So I want to spend just a moment on this particular symbol. So a linear program, as I said earlier, is one of the form like A plus B is less than or equal to something, and then A minus B is less than or equal to something else, solve for A and B. These linear programs, as I said, they're state-of-the-art solvers. You can solve these linear programs in polynomial time, but it is in and of itself just another operation. So in the same way that adding two numbers or taking the max of two numbers is an operation, you can actually solve a linear program in the middle of your optimization model. You can specify as your overall model something that adds numbers together, takes the output of that, feeds it into a linear program, takes the output of that linear program, and uses it elsewhere. So not only can these symbols, do we have a lot of symbols, but some of these symbols are quite complex and can do very powerful things. So this symbol is interesting in particular. Oh, by the way, the API there in the bottom right is inspired by SciPy. Don't at me, it's a little short, but we want to follow SciPy because that's what people are used to. But the nice thing that this symbol brings you as a lovely side effect is that this introduces continuous variables to our solver. You can now solve many problems with continuous variables. And in fact, this makes the solver a superset of our CQM solver, our previous flagship solver. So now any problem you could send to CQM can now be sent to our NL solver, which is a really important step to having sort of one simple interface for everyone to use. So what's an example of a problem that makes use of this? So the problem that I like most currently is this satellite placement problem. So imagine, if you will, that you have a geosynchronous orbit that you want to place satellites within. Each of these satellites has a certain piece of Earth that it wants to view. And then these satellites interfere with each other. And so different satellites maybe are transmitting on the same bandwidth or something like that. So different types of satellites will interfere with each other more or less. And the amount of interference is modulated by how close and far they are to each other. For anyone who's interested in the math, it's there on the screen. I'd be happy to talk about it. But suffice to say, you can model this using this linear program node. You use one of those list nodes I mentioned earlier, these combinatorial structures, to define the order of satellites within your orbit. And then you use this linear programming node to decide where exactly each of those satellites are placed. And it turns out that when we do this, by using this sort of non-linear discrete part of the problem and using this linear program node for the continuous part of the problem, we can get an enormous performance benefit. So here I'm showing a plot comparing performance on the satellite placement problem between our non-linear solver and our CQM solver. And you can see that the lower is better. Lower to the right is better. We can do far more satellites in far less time and get far better performance on our nonlinear solver by taking the nonlinear combinatorial parts of the problem, expressing that using all of those features that I mentioned earlier, and then using the linear program node to specify the detailed placement. Okay, quantum optimization. Whew. All right, so coming back to the beginning, I said there was going to be 3 different areas that I was going to be talking about: quantum optimization, quantum machine learning, and quantum research. So the second main product focus then is this quantum machine learning. So this is being really driven by a couple very cool and successful customer engagements. Specifically, there have been 2 that were both using the same basic technology on the quantum computer. So the first is Japan Tobacco, and the second is Triumph. Both of them use something called a restricted Boltzmann machine on the quantum computer to do a generative AI application. So for Japan Tobacco, it was generating molecules, and for Triumph, it was doing a generative model for the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. It's very cool. So being the smart, open source, product-oriented, customer-centric people that we are, we said if we have 2 customers doing something, that probably means there's other customers that are doing this, that want to do the same thing. And so just last week, we released our D-Wave PyTorch plugin that has an implementation of the restricted Boltzmann machine on the quantum computer already implemented in it. On the right, I have an example of that API, which for anyone who's used to PyTorch, this should be very comfortable. I do want to spend one moment on why we picked PyTorch specifically. PyTorch is a performant production-grade machine learning framework. This is what we have been told from most of our customers that they are using in production right now. And at D-Wave, getting in production is the entire goal. Unlike a lot of our other friends in the space who are doing very nice, but ultimately demos or little toys, we're very interested in getting into production. So if we're going to be building a machine learning library, it's going to be in a production workspace. And so we are bringing the power of our quantum computer into a production-grade machine learning library so that we can have a step towards getting machine learning applications, quantum machine learning applications, into production machine learning workflows. Okay, then the last area that I want to talk about is our quantum research enablement. So this one is the one that I think is the biggest sort of grab bag, and the slide reflects it. In quantum research, obviously, researchers, even more than optimization folks and machine learning folks, the different types of questions you might want to ask. This is really addressing a set of feature requests we've gotten. Our supremacy result that we put the preprint out last spring has obviously driven quite a bit of interest in quantum research. And so we've implemented some features based on the requests from customers who are doing work in this space. 2 in particular that I want to highlight. The first is our linear ancilla composite. So Emil mentioned earlier that we got quite a bit of usage of our Advantage 2 prototype. A big draw to the Advantage 2 prototype, a big thing that drew that usage, was our fast annealing feature. But one of the most common feature requests we've gotten, for those of you using fast anneal, is to do linear biases in the fast anneal regime. Little known fact, we have this linear ancilla composite that lets you do that in Ocean right now by using some auxiliary qubits and quadratic biases to simulate a linear bias. This is a full implementation of linear biases in the fast anneal regime. So if you're asking for that and you haven't used this composite, I really advise you to check it out. It gives you that feature. You can do those experiments right now. The second one that I want to highlight is a set of simulated quantum annealing solvers that we've added. These are pure classical solvers used for comparison. Ocean for a while has had a few optimization solvers in it that you can use to compare. They're good faith implementations of some of the classic optimization problems. In some cases, they're actually quite good. But we haven't up till now had a simulated quantum annealing. It's very useful when you're doing physics experiments to be able to compare to what the model says it should be. And our 2 SQA solvers, simulated quantum annealing solvers, allow you to do that more easily. Okay, so then the last thing that I want to mention, I have it sort of under this quantum research area, but really it does apply to all the areas I've discussed. We have also done a refresh of our documentation. We have unified our 2 documentation sites into one. This is something that has been a long requested feature because we had our Ocean documentation separate from our system documentation. But by bringing them together, we have improved the navigability of both very, very much. So now it's much easier to navigate back and forth between some of the theory docs, between some of the more explanatory tutorials, and then the reference documentation associated with Ocean and some of the specific packages. The other thing that we've done is that we have changed the landing page to be targeted to each of the 3 areas that I just described. So hey, it was foreshadowing. We have our industrial optimization, we have our machine learning, and we have our quantum research areas right there on the landing page, because we know that folks coming from each of those spaces often have slightly different needs, slightly different expectations, slightly different things they are bringing to the table in terms of what they do know and what they're interested in finding out more. And so by dividing it in this way, we've eased navigability of our docs. So I would really encourage folks to check it out. In fact, that's where I'm going to end this by saying I would really encourage anyone who's interested in checking out the details of any of the stuff that I've talked about to go to our documentation. It's docs@dwavequantum.com. Please check it out. I'll also be back to answer questions, and I'll be in the hallway. So really excited to talk about this stuff. As you can tell, we're really excited about all the stuff we're working on. So thank you all, and I think that's it for me.